The location is set in the Italian city of Sicily. The story begins by showing a mafia boss with his son, who has just returned home after receiving an emergency call from one of his members, where the boss told his son to wait for a while in the car, then approached one of his subordinates, who looked very scared, tense, and nervous, as if he had seen something very terrible. And it turned out that he was naturally scared, because how could he not? When the boss stepped his feet inside, he saw brutality that was completely out of bounds when all of his men on guard were dead, with very sad and inhuman conditions. And of course, you all must have guessed that all of this can only be done by one person, our hero, who is none other than Robert McCall. Of course, only he can do it. Robert deliberately let himself get caught, and deliberately let the 3 members of the boss stay alive so that he could meet directly with the mafia boss, who was his main goal.
I know what you are.
Robert said that if his men had let him in, they might still be alive today. Robert just wanted to retrieve something that didn't belong to the mob boss, something that the mob boss had stolen from someone. When he saw the key on his waist, that's when Robert guessed that it was kept in a room that had to be opened with the key. So, as usual, Robert immediately turned on the timer on his digital clock that was set to 9 seconds to give the mob boss time to hand over the key and give him a chance to repent and move on with his life. But since the mob boss was reluctant to do so, Robert went on to explain how they all died, starting with one of his men pointing a gun too close, which, if he pulled the trigger, would cause the man to his right to be shot dead, and so on. Which, while the mob boss and everyone else in the warehouse were astonished by what he was saying, suddenly. It's always like this. The villains from the first, second, and third movies are always given the opportunity to repent and continue their lives better. But they chose to die without considering who they were dealing with first. If you are new to Robert McCall, without seeing the first and second movies first, then I will give a little description of the figure of Robert McCall, who is an ordinary old man who has retired from his profession. And the profession I mean here is a profession that cannot be done by ordinary people. It takes skill, experience, and intelligence that not everyone has. Even though he is retired, but when he sees that there are people who are wronged, hurt, and made to suffer, on the other hand, if there are those who enjoy the suffering, then Robert will appear to be a counterweight. And here's a movie called The Equalizer 3. After Robert got what he wanted, he went out and found the mafia boss's son waiting for his father in the car. Robert is not a psychopath who would kill a woman and a child, so he immediately left without knowing that the child would silently shoot Robert from behind, using his father's rifle. Severely injured, Robert insisted on driving home and accidentally passed out right by the side of the road, where he was found by a police officer on patrol who took him to the village to be treated by a local doctor. When he woke up, Robert wanted to leave, but the doctor forbade him because the wound was still wet. Where the doctor wondered about Robert's figure, did he save the right person? And did the doctor save a good or bad person? Robert immediately replied that he himself didn't even know whether he was a bad guy or a good guy. 3 days passed. Robert's wound gradually recovered, but it was not completely healed, and he even had to use a cane to walk. The kind doctor also told Robert to walk out to the square so that he could get fresh air. Tired of walking, Robert decides to have a tea bag at a cafe, as is his habit. Here, Robert always takes a tissue to place the spoon and glass in a symmetrical and precise position, proof that Robert is a typical person who is neat, planned, measured, and always takes everything into account. While enjoying his tea, Robert saw that people seemed very peaceful going about their activities, so for a moment, he could feel the calm and peace in this small town. Not long after, a policeman named Gio appeared, the one who had saved Robert on the side of the road. Gio was well aware that Robert was someone who was in big trouble, because it was impossible for ordinary people to get gunshot wounds like Robert did. Gio immediately explained that this city was a name for a city filled with good people. So in a subtle way, Gio asked Robert to leave when his wound was completely healed.
Andiamo. Dai.
Ciao Roberto.
Gabby.
Back to the problem. Robert was seen contacting a CIA agent from the financial division named Emma to report that there was something suspicious in the place of the mob boss that Robert had killed. Robert at that time actually only intended to take something that had been stolen by the mob boss, but he accidentally found odd things in the place. So Emma and her team were asked to go there and do an inspection.
Vineyard in Sicily.
While waiting for him to fully recover, Robert went back out to enjoy the beauty and peace of this small town. But as the wise words say, peace is the only thing that can't last long. It was immediately proven when Robert passed a group of young mafia, led by an arrogant young man named Marco, who happened to be beating up a fishmonger because of a late payment. If only they knew who Robert was, maybe Marco and his group would think twice about doing something like that around him. And let me introduce you to Marco's brother, Vincent. Here he is, a mob boss who is still in the same family as the mob boss Robert killed. Here, Vincent's mission is to turn this city into something luxurious, such as hotels, casinos, bars, and entertainment venues for foreign tourists. So he forces local residents to sell their homes, which, when someone refuses, Vincent will not hesitate to take cruel and anarchic actions against his own townspeople. Turning to the mafia boss's residence in the first scene that Robert had killed. Emma and her team found something unexpected, namely several wine drums containing synthetic amphetamines, aka drugs, along with several people who died horribly, and only one fingerprint was found at this location. So they all include Emma, who is curious about the person who has done all this.
That money in there, is that connected?
No, that's something else.
A few days passed, and now Robert was fully recovered and ready to leave. But before that, he asked the doctor about why he did not report to the police or take Robert directly to the hospital. And why did he not suspect Robert, who might be a bad person? The doctor also answered that when Robert was asked whether he was a good or bad person, he answered that he did not know and that only a good person would answer like that. So the doctor was convinced that Robert was a good person who deserved to be saved. And when we can and are able to help others, why not? It was when he was about to leave that Robert was surprised by the people who were busy putting out the fire. It turns out that the house where the fishmonger lives has been burned down by an irresponsible group. But the saddest thing is, it's not about the fish stall that was burned down. There were children and his wife who were still inside, so it's natural that the fishmonger was very hysterical seeing his house consumed by fire. When everyone was focused on the fire, Robert was the only one who was able to see the situation around him, while Marco and his group only watched this incident from a distance. So that Robert, who is experienced in the criminal world, can immediately guess if the culprit is all of them. The fact is that they are the culprits. Marco did it according to orders from his brother Vincent to terrorize all the townspeople so that they would not feel at home here. So that when everyone moved away, Vincent could immediately take control of this small town and make it a tourist spot according to what he had planned. Back to Robert, who was sitting while praying. he was really in a dilemma about whether to leave here or not. Because after seeing the peace in this city disturbed, it finally made the brutal soul in him reappear. When Robert needed peace and comfort somewhere, there were always people who disturbed that peace, which made Robert return to being brutal like his past. And according to his nickname, the Equalizer, Robert decided to stay at the hotel for the next few days, seeing if the situation would be conducive or even get worse. Turning to the police station, it was Gio who was checking the CCTV footage at the scene. He saw the perpetrators getting out of a van with an unknown license plate, so Gio called his colleague to check who the owner of the van was. Robert himself has been seen enjoying his tea at night and sitting in the same chair since he first came to this cafe. A waitress named Amina was curious about the figure of Robert, who, even though he was a foreigner, wanted to help in yesterday's incident by putting out the fishmonger's fire the other day. Wanting to show the kindness of the city, Amina also took Robert for a walk while showing him the specialties of this small town. As time goes by, Robert is increasingly recognized and accepted by all residents. Proven when Robert got a little gift from a grandmother, so Robert began to feel comfortable and confident that this city was the right place for him to retire and spend his old age in a city filled with good people. One morning, while having a cup of coffee and sitting on the same bench, there was Emma, who apparently managed to track Robert's whereabouts based on the phone number Robert used the other day. Instead of intending to take a photo of Robert silently, Robert realized it first. Even if Emma wanted a clear and good photo, Robert would gladly face and smile at her. Emma, who was curious, asked about who Robert worked for, why his fingerprints could not be traced, why his identity was not in the population census data, and how he single-handedly slaughtered the mafia group in the place yesterday. Robert casually replied that he came to the city of Sicily only to pick up something that had been stolen by the mafia boss. But while there, he accidentally found suspicious things, namely the drugs that Emma and her team had confiscated. The rest, Robert, did not want to know and would not interfere because it was no longer his job. On the other hand, Gio gets into trouble when the teacher's mother says that his daughter was picked up by a large and scary person, so he rushes home. Which was a surprise to Gio when he saw that his wife had just finished being raped and his daughter was threatened with death. All of this is, of course, the work of Marco, who does not want his crime to be revealed. Seeing Gio's battered face, Robert, who happened to come to visit, immediately asked the doctor about what was really going on in this city. Who were the people who had made this peaceful city unsettled? Which, hesitantly and a little frightened, the doctor replied that the culprits were the mafia, especially a mafia boss named Vincent, who had long been a pest in this small town. One night, when Gio and his little family ate at the restaurant, Marco reappeared, wanting to make sure yesterday's case was closed. With his rancid face, Marco looked at Gio's wife with a lascivious look, as if giving a threat code, so that Gio felt intimidated and helpless to do anything. Which is where this cocky Marco suddenly fell silent, when across the table there was our hero, Robert, who was focused and staring at him. Feeling challenged, Marco sat down at Robert's table. Before he started the conversation, Robert first spoke by saying that he was starting to like this small town. If Marco and his group do bad things, please do them somewhere else, not here. Here, Robert was not threatening, but rather advising him, so that it made Marco and his men laugh. And suddenly, Marco was immediately distressed as Robert pressed the space between his forefinger and thumb. Robert explained a little about the medical world, saying that what Robert was pressing now was the median nerve, which functions to control finger movement, as well as the nerve that sends pain signals to the brain. On a scale of 1 to 10, the pain they felt at this time was only on a scale of 2. If Robert pressed even harder, then the pain would be even more extraordinary, until Marco peed his pants. So Marco immediately obeyed Robert's orders to tell the four members to get out of this restaurant. Feeling safe, Robert let go of Marco's hand and tried to talk well about Marco, who was still young and still had a long future. It would be a pity if he had to die tonight. So for the second time, Robert gave Marco a chance not to repeat the same mistake. But because he felt he had a strong backing in Vincent, Marco still wouldn't stop. Arriving outside, Marco immediately ordered one of his members to immediately get a car so that he could quickly meet Vincent to complain to his brother about what had just happened. Because he was still upset and felt humiliated, Marco, who was angry, asked his men for a gun. He intended to kill Robert at that time, but... Smiling and raising both hands, Robert walked up to Marco, who was ready to attack with a knife, and... Even though he had been warned and given the opportunity not to make trouble. Here, Marco had to die at a young age, and Robert really regretted this. Turning to Emma, who is meeting with the local police chief, she wants to interrogate several prisoners suspected of having a connection with yesterday's drug discovery case to find out who else is involved in this case. Where the police chief seems to recognize a face that he strongly forbids Emma to interrogate, which in fact makes Emma curious and strengthens her desire to interrogate this person.
I'm here to give you an opportunity.
Based on the prisoner's report, Emma's team managed to carry out a massive ambush on the headquarters of one of the mafia in Italy, and it was very dangerous for Emma. Because in addition to her conducting her own investigation, Emma was also vulnerable to being attacked by one of the remaining members of the mafia family, Vincent, who, at that time, immediately made an assassination attempt by placing a bomb under the car that Emma was about to drive. Luckily, Emma was still alive and only suffered injuries that had to be treated, where her superiors told Emma to rest first and leave this case to her team. And it was revealed that the police chief Emma met yesterday was a corrupt police officer who often got a monthly ration from the proceeds of this dirty business. The police chief's visit to Vincent was to ask him to temporarily stop this business. Because if this case was revealed further, not only Vincent would be harmed, but the police chief's career would also be harmed. Not wanting to be bossed around and feeling that he was the ruler of Sicily, Vincent made a few threats to keep the police chief quiet about his involvement in this black business. That night, Vincent brought all his members to look for the perpetrators who had killed his brother Marco, where Gio was again used as a sacrifice and the target of the mafia when Vincent shot his ear. Because he did not want to fall victim, Robert was forced to surrender himself, who of course appeared with a calm, relaxed, and measured expression. When Vincent was about to shoot him, suddenly. Of course, all the local residents also compactly recorded this moment. As we know, viral is the most powerful weapon in this era. Who is viral, then be ready for his name to be known. Who is viral, then must be prepared for his movements to be monitored. So that rather than having his business disrupted, Vincent chose to postpone his intention and look for another time to get a better opportunity. When they arrived at his headquarters, Vincent, who still could not calm down, sulked again in front of his members that the incident was very embarrassing, as if the mafia had no pride anymore, because they were defeated by a trivial thing that felt they made their name humiliated. So right tomorrow, they agreed to hunt down Robert at once and burn this small town so that the revenge for his brother's death would be completed immediately. And the plan to build a tourist resort could be quickly implemented. Right at the end of the night, when Vincent is sleeping beautifully and his men are on non-stop 24-hour guard, someone emerges from the darkness and kills the guards one by one with a very silent kill mode, which can be seen from how he puts the bodies of the people he kills gently and slowly. Not just dropped, but laid down slowly so as not to make noise. As you can guess, that person is Robert, who is always one step ahead of the villain himself. Like a ninja, Robert could move in silence and solitude, emerging from the darkness. So even if the guards outnumbered him, Robert could kill them one by one without being spotted by the others. After all the guards had been taken out, meaning they had been brutally murdered, Vincent was now left alone and was awakened by a trickle of blood falling from above, which he noticed, and suddenly, like a child calling out for his mother, Vincent screamed and called out to each of his members, but none of them responded. When he checked, all of them were dead, with conditions that were no less gruesome than Robert's previous victims. So at this point, Vincent was really scared and didn't know who he was dealing with. When he woke up, Vincent was already bound and foaming at the mouth because, apparently, Robert had forcibly inserted drugs into his body. So in other words, Vincent was currently overdosing. And according to Robert's calculations, Vincent's heart would stop in about 6 minutes. Because he still wanted to give him a chance, Robert untied Vincent so that he could go out to find a doctor, even though there wouldn't be enough time. At this point, I personally honestly feel sorry for Vincent, or see him staggering around, trying to find a doctor for his life. But remembering his actions and behavior of confiscating people's houses, hanging helpless people, burning houses, and killing the fishmonger's son and wife, it's hard to feel full sympathy, so Vincent must die before he can realize the plans he has prepared for years of being in the mafia. A few days passed, and Robert visited Emma in the hospital just as the police managed to arrest all the Italian mafia kingpins involved in this business. All the mafia in Italy was finished. There was really nothing left. And of course, Emma had to thank Robert. Robert also carries money in a bag, the money he took from the mafia boss at the beginning, that he has not had time to hand over to the rightful owner. So the chronology is that there is an old grandfather who is a former construction worker who has retired. His pension fund is reportedly missing because it was hacked by an irresponsible party. Robert then tried to trace the money, and the name of the mafia boss came up. So upon Robert's arrival at the beginning of the movie, the purpose of coming to the city of Sicily was to take the money and hand it over to the retired grandfather, whom Robert himself did not even know was the person he was helping.
6,400 cash US.
After recovering, Emma immediately brought the money to the owner, the grandfather, and his wife. Emma came at the right time because the two of them were just about to move because they couldn't afford the rent. When the grandfather asked, "Who helped me?" Emma answered that the helper was Robert. The grandfather didn't recognize the name at all. So at this point, Emma finally realized that Robert was really a sincere person who was kind, who even strangers he helped selflessly and without expecting the slightest reward. And that's the ending of The Equalizer 3. So in conclusion, all the movies played by Denzel Washington always give emotions, cause, or trigger your adrenaline to make us all upset and tense. The criminals who face him always underestimate his abilities. So if they die badly, it's their own fault. Even though they have been given the opportunity to be reminded, they still continue their crimes. So the message we can take from this movie is that there are no good people who have no past, and there are also no bad people who have no future. Everyone has the same opportunity to change for the better, no matter what his past was or how dark his behavior was in the past. Give someone a chance to change. Don't look at someone from his past, and don't look at someone from his status and wealth. Okay, thank you, and see you in the next video. Bye.